Fadden.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I rise to lend a few brief comments in response to the Minister's detailed statement that he's made to the House this morning. I thank you for his statement and his commitment to keep the House informed across these range of matters. I rise today to reiterate once again the very strong tradition of the coalition that we offer and take seriously bipartisan support for combat operations, not just in the wider Middle East area of operations, but wherever Australian soldiers, sailors and airmen and women serve. Our support has not wavered on this. It has been universal. We have given support for the last 6 years of combat operations, especially when it's been difficult and hard. We also support the combat force wind down in Tarin Kowt, the handover of the Tarin Kowt base to the Afghan National Army and the residual clean-up work, logistics handover work that goes with that. Let me also rise to join the Minister to thank our fighting men and women for what they're doing. It remains tough and difficult work. Our hearts and our prayers go to them as they continue to uphold the great traditions that our military has borne for so many years. The Coalition's bipartisan support goes to the detainee management framework, governance, monitoring, operations and reporting as well. I join the Minister in noting we are a first world nation. We abide by the rule of law, particularly in armed conflict. Concepts such as rules of engagement and orders for opening fire aren't simply acronyms. They are an important basis upon which we, as a first world nation, prosecute our combat operations. It is important to note that our enemies do not follow such a distinguished way of operating. Let the other nations of the world judge them, but let the nations of the world judge us by our standards. And I agree with the Minister that our standards are high, that our accountability is strong, that we remain open to criticism and we confront it when it's raised, and we are not afraid for this nation's parliament to point out where we may have erred, what we have done to investigate it and how it has been resolved. Australians should be proud of that degree of openness. I note the detainee numbers in the last 20 months have risen to 1,898 suspected insurgents. One of the key factors to remember is that is an enormous number of insurgents for our soldiers ostensibly to have captured on the battlefield or suspected or stopped at roadblocks or in other areas. That is an enormous rate of effort of what our troops are doing in terms of understanding the environment and ensure that local civilians are safe from insurgent activity. It's a testimony to our efficiency in operations. I also note that the capture-recapture rate is exceptionally low, considering the very high number of detainees, which speaks volumes of our capacity in terms of our tactical questioning, our interrogation capabilities and the entire process. I thank the Minister for his update on the allegations of mistreatment by Australians towards insurgents. I note that they are all properly and thoroughly investigated. I note that 90% of allegations of mistreatment were at the point of capture. Can I say that is quite understandable when those being captured don't want to be captured and put up a degree of resistance. Nor can I say is it surprising that 100% of the allegations have been found to be untrue. Nor do I find it surprising that the insurgents that we fight continue to fabricate stories, even when conclusive CCTV footage shows that what they are saying is absolutely, palpably and completely untrue. Again, you can hardly find a greater dichotomy between the way we prosecute operations and the way our insurgents prosecute theirs. I note the Minister's comment on the suspension of transfers to the National Directorate of Security Detention Facility in Tarin Kowt. It is my contention that if the Minister is concerned about allegations, he is right to suspend transfers, and he's done so. I note that those allegations do not surround any of the ADF transferees, and I note that this is a completely Afghan-run facility. I also note that the one ADF transferee detainee that was at the facility at the time of the suspension has been visited, and I understand from the Minister's statement that he has personally advised that he has not been mistreated in any way. The ADF has then ensured that its duty of care to its detainees has been properly met. MINDEF has also raised with the Afghan authorities, indeed with the Afghan Foreign Minister Rasool personally, our disappointment at what is happening in that facility, and I believe that Minister Rasool is investigating this appropriately and thoroughly. I thank the Minister for his update on the initial screening area within TK, and I note that when the Tarankout base closes for ADF involvement and is handed over to ostensibly the 4th Brigade of the Afghan National Army, that initial screening area will close and the team will move out in line with our ADF troop withdrawal. I also thank the Minister for his procedural misconduct and regulation updates. I note the investigations and we note the outcomes. We also note the Minister's update on the incredibly regrettable instances of civilian casualties. We acknowledge the investigation officer's reports into areas where Australian troops have been involved. We note the CJOC response, and I also note that there are some reports outstanding. I still remain concerned, Minister, at the time that is being taken for these reports to eventuate, as I believe a concern you may well share as well, and again reiterate our request that more resources, if needed, are applied to ensure that reporting does not continue to be delayed. I join the Minister in concluding that we praise our fighting men and women for what they've done. Their professionalism is of the highest standard. Their accountability is of the highest standard. And in terms of accountability for the prosecution of combat operations in the history of Australia's warcraft, this conflict would have to be the one where our men and women are held to the highest levels of accountability, where the reporting is thorough, where individual instances are investigated thoroughly, and we as a nation should be incredibly proud of that. We are a first world military. We take our combat operations and the legalities and the rules of engagements around that seriously. We are not above the law, but indeed we are a standard bearer for the law on the grounds upon which we fight. I think we're all very proud of what our men and women are doing overseas. I am, I know the Minister is, I know the Parliament is, and I thank them for the great work they're doing.